ladies and gentlemen, Rodney Bellamy.
It was December 1996, and my wife and I were in this exam room for our first ultrasound together for the birth of our child. Now, we already knew that we were going to have a son. We decided that, and we decided his name would be Kari Urijah. Kari is a West African name. It means strong, kingly warrior, and Urijah is Arabic. It means the fire of God, which meant that our son had to live up to the character of his name. While we're in the exam room, there's a room full of technicians, and they're rubbing the cold gel on her belly. I'm looking at the monitor screen, I'm watching the pictures explode, and I'm seeing these black and white blurry images. You know what I'm talking about, the pictures that I can't tell it's a baby there, but the technicians seem to know this. But we noticed that the technicians were kind of like huddled together, kind of like a football team, and they're talking amongst themselves. So I looked at my wife, and we wondered, what are they talking about? Something that they need to discuss with us. So I called out to one of the technicians and said, excuse me, is there something about the ultrasound you want to discuss with us, perhaps? And one of the technicians said, well, yes, but we're not authorized to do so. You need to talk with one of our physicians on staff. She's away at lunch at the moment. She'll be back in about an hour. And I'm thinking, an hour? An hour for them is like an eternity for us. Because, like I said, we knew what we were there for. We knew we were having a son. We knew. But there's something that they need to discuss with us that we weren't quite sure about. Fortunately, the doctor did come back from lunch on time. She took us into her office, sat behind this big, huge desk, and with a big smile on her face, she said, we've determined that your son has this health condition called hypoplastic left heart. That means the left side of his heart did not develop. We expect that one of three things will no doubt happen. One, he'll die in childbirth. Two, we don't think you have you can afford the surgery it would take to sustain his life. And if he is born, he'll be so weakly and sick, he'll have a lot of health challenges, put your family through a lot of grief. We recommend that you terminate the pregnancy. I immediately looked at my wife, and she broke down crying. I looked at the doctor, and I exploded at her and said, what are you talking about? What is this hypoplastic left heart? We've never heard this before. That's not what we came to hear. What is this condition? And how are you going to tell us this kind of information with a big smile on your face? Well, she apologized for smiling, but she wasn't able to answer the questions that we had. She said, he has this heart condition, and we can tell. I immediately said, well, how do you know this? He said, well, we're trained to know these things. He does have this condition. We demanded to have a second opinion. And she said to us, we'll find a second doctor who can provide this information for you. If you go home, we'll schedule an appointment for you, let you know we can come back in. We left. And as soon as we got home, we immediately started researching online, trying to find out what is this hypoplastic left heart condition that they're talking about. So many questions were exploding in our minds, such as, what causes this condition? Was it something that I did? Was it something that she did? Was it some type of nefarious conspiracy that we need to sue somebody over? We didn't know. About 2 weeks after that first appointment, and I think we were about 3 or 4 months at the time, about 2 weeks after that appointment, we received a call from the hospital. They had scheduled the appointment for us for 2 weeks later, which meant about a month later, and now we're about 5 months, I believe, we returned for our second appointment. This time we met with another doctor. It wasn't a smiling doctor. This man was very serious, very stoic, and he said to us, I understand you have a lot of questions, and we're going to provide answers for you. And he said to us, we know that your son has this heart condition. And then he repeated the exact same thing we heard from the first doctor. Nothing different. He just wasn't smiling about it. Again, we demanded to have another opinion because we had questions that needed to be answered and no one was giving us answers. Mind you, we're all pretty educated. But when it comes to medical stuff like that, I had no idea what that was about. So we left. And they scheduled a third appointment for us, and this time it was within the next week, and they scheduled for us to talk to one of the fine, upstanding cardiovascular pediatricians on staff well respected in the medical community. So we came to meet with her, sat down with her, and she was very warm, very friendly. She said to us, I can't imagine what a family's going through with issues like this. I know you have questions and we haven't been able to give you the answers. I'm going to tell you what you need to know. And then she repeated again, the exact same thing all over again. Nothing different. Again, we demanded we had to have another opinion. We had questions that we need to be answered, and they're just telling us the same thing over and over and over again. I'm wondering, how are they able to tell that my son has this heart condition? They keep showing us this ultrasound photo. Who in here knows where the baby is in the ultrasound photo? I had no way of knowing this. We left. We went home. And the next few months was very challenging. The communication between my wife and I was not the same. We relied on our faith to try to get us through day by day. But then our faith would get challenged by some of the people who we worshiped with. Would say things like, well, you know, it's probably something you or your wife did that you're just not aware of, but God knows. God is punishing you for this, so just bear with it. Then we'd hear things like, well, it's probably something that your son has done, or he will do, and you can deal with this. God is punishing him. And trust me, that's not the kind of information that we expect to hear. That's not in line with the kind of faith that we had. So we had to rely on ourselves. Months went by, and let's see, my son's surgery was scheduled, He was scheduled to be born on about May 28th, if I remember correctly, and he was born on May 9th. Just before he was born, I went to my father. My father's been a great help to me. He's the man that taught me the importance of relationships, of loving my family, of enduring. I remember as a child how he would come to my brother and I when he would come home from work and we were children, and he would hug and kiss us every night before we went to bed. And that stayed in my mind. He's always been that very helpful assistant for me. So I went to him and asked him for guidance. My father said, boy, I can't help you. I've never been through a situation like this, but you are a strong man, and I know you can find your way through this. And I'm there to support you when you need it. That did mean a lot to me. So on the day that my son was born, our family came down to support us. And we had the family room crowded with Bellamy's. We were everywhere. My son's surgery was scheduled to take about 8 hours. He was done within 6. The surgery was a success. We were excited. His birth was a success. But then we had to think about what comes next, because my son was 9 pounds, 6 ounces. Despite what the doctor said about him being sick and malnourished, things like that, he was a strong little boy. Now, my wife went through some complications because of that 9 pounds, 6 ounces. So she wasn't going anywhere for a few days. I remember the night after he was born, I was in the room with her, we were talking, and a doctor came into the room from a totally different hospital. This was the other opinion that we'd been demanding. He sat down with us and said, I understand you've been through a lot. Congratulations on the birth of your son. But you still have to deal with getting you other answers as well. He said, I need for you to tell me what you know, what you understand. That amazed us. This time, the doctor wasn't trying to tell us what we're supposed to know. He's asking first what we understood. Well, we explained what little bit we knew. And he's nodding his head and he said, I don't have the answers for you that you need. But what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to schedule an appointment for you to talk to another doctor tomorrow who can explain to you how these doctors were able to come to the conclusion that he has this heart condition. So the appointment was scheduled for the next day. And because my wife was still in the hospital, I had to drag my 7-year-old daughter around with me wherever I went. So we come down to the hospital, running late for the appointment. We run inside, we rush to the elevator, come up on the 3rd floor, doors open up, and there's a doctor waiting there to greet us. And she says, you must be Mr. Bellamy. I'm here to give you the answers that you need so that you and your wife can make the decisions that you need to make. She's leading us towards her office. She looks at my daughter and says, and what's your name? My daughter says, Katia. Let me stop for a second. My daughter, Katia, that's a very special name. It means righteous, godly example. Her middle name is Renee. It means born again. So you can tell my children's names mean a lot to us. But I was impressed with how this doctor took the time to connect with my daughter and have conversation with her. Because she said to her, we're going to give you the information that you need so that your mother and father can make the decisions that they need to make so that you can spend more time with your brother. How does that sound? Of course, my daughter said, sounds great. She took us into the office, sat me down, she dimmed the lights, and put out all these videotapes of ultrasounds. My son's ultrasound. You know, I didn't realize that they actually took video recordings of ultrasounds. I'm just used to seeing the black and white photo. And I learned that's how they were able to determine that he has his heart condition from the video recordings. She shared so much information with me that I felt like I could diagnose heart conditions now. I jumped on the phone immediately, called my wife in the hospital and said, explained to her what the doctor had shared with us, and we made a decision right there on the spot. We're going to go through with surgery, whatever that might require. So they scheduled an appointment for us to talk to one more doctor. This would have been about 2-3 days after. By then, my wife was out of the hospital, and we went to go see the cardiovascular surgeon. Now, I have to admit, I had a hard time communicating with him. He had this very thick accent, but he said to me that he thought I had a thick accent as well. But he was able to break down the communication barriers between us. He put out all these photographs, these drawings, magazine articles. He had a heart motto on his desk, and he explained to us how my son's surgery would take place when he turned 6 days old. His second surgery would be just about the time he turns 6 months. His third surgery would be just before he turns 2. He shared so much information with us. We felt a lot more positive and ready for surgery. So he contacted our family, had everybody come down, and the surgery went very well. It was a success. But then, can you imagine this thing called recovery? My son is laying up in the hospital bed. His chest is wide open. Arms and legs are stretched out. Machines surrounding all around him and wires and cords attached to him, keeping him alive, keeping him breathing. I don't know what father, what parent could endure something like that. That was a serious test to my understanding of fatherhood. He went through his first surgery, and when he came home, was prescribed 12 different medications. He's actually only down to 1 now. His second surgery took place in 6 months, and when that surgery took place, it was a party then, y'all. We would call up our friends and family and say, hey, Kyrie's having his next surgery. Come on down, we're going to have a party. People would come down, we had balloons, food, we take over the waiting rooms and everything. We'd play music. We had a grand time. His third surgery, just before he turned 2, that went well as well. My son, Kyrie, he turned 18 last year. He just finished 12th grade. Thank you. Now, what's special about Kyrie, he is what you call special needs. You know, he walks around with half of a heart in his chest, but you wouldn't know it. I used to say when he was little that he runs, climbs, fights, bites everything in sight. He's also what they call mildly developmentally delayed. They claim he's like a couple years behind the typical child. But my son Kyrie right now aspires to be a movie director. And I watch how he's writing screenplays. I'm so impressed by that. But you know, I talked earlier about how his name is so important. He's the strong kingly warrior, the fire of God, and how that name means so much. But the one thing I learned through all this is myself as a father and what I've experienced because of his experience and how close we are now. I say that he's my superhero, but he's made me that strong kingly warrior, the fire of God. Thank you.
Rodney Bellamy.